The US, UK and Australia have unveiled the details of a plan to provide Australia with nuclear-powered attack submarines from the early 2030s. Former Australian Prime Minister Paul Keating criticized the deal in an address on Wednesday. For more, our correspondent Greg Navarro is joining us from Sydney. Hello, Greg. So what did Paul Keating say about the deal?
Well, first we need to talk about the deal itself so you can have a better understanding. It was announced yesterday with the leaders of Australia, the US and the UK. They form a group known as AUKUS, which is an acronym for those three countries, announcing, as you mentioned, that Australia would acquire a fleet of nuclear-powered submarines, not nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered submarines to replace its aging fleet of conventionally powered submarines that would rely on technology from both the US and the UK. Now, that plan would happen in stages at a cost, according to Australia's government, of more than 360 billion Australian dollars over a 30-year period, which would eventually see both Australia and the UK create a new class of nuclear-powered submarines, again, relying on technology from the US. Australia is saying that it will greatly increase its defense capabilities across the region and obviously replace those aging ones. All right, let's fast forward to today. Now, former Labor Prime Minister Paul Keating has not been a fan of AUKUS since it was announced 18 months ago. He's been a very vocal critic. Today, he delivered a speech before the National Press Club in Canberra where it was really quite extraordinary. He called that deal the worst international decision by a Labor Party government in more than 100 years. Keating went on to say that by deepening ties with the US and the UK, that Australia was basically putting itself at risk. He also said that that deal would risk the country's sovereignty as well as a confrontation with China. Now, as for him calling it the worst deal he's seen in more than 100 years, he went on to explain, again, that price tag more than 360 billion Australian dollars. In Keating's words, that will see Australia receive 8 nuclear-powered submarines. That's still up for debate. He said for that same money, you could buy 40 to 50 conventionally powered submarines, basically by going with the lesser number. As you can imagine, he was saying that Australia really hurts its opportunity to be able to protect itself and increase its defense capabilities. Now, there's been no word, no comment from Australia's government on all of this, as you can imagine. Instead, they've been busy talking about this deal. In fact, the government signed an agreement of cooperation with the government of South Australia, where presumably a lot of that work will take place. Look, one thing though, defense experts have been saying for quite some time now, when you look at the aging conventionally powered submarines that Australia has, that they're really not cutting it, according to defense experts. They say those nuclear powered submarines will allow Australia's Navy certainly to cover the distances they need to around the country as well as across the region, increasing its defense capabilities. The other thing that they point out with the nuclear-powered submarines, they're a lot stealthier than those conventionally powered submarines, which if you run a submarine fleet within a defense force, that is a big bonus.
Okay, thank you for the update. Greg Navarro in Sydney.